Let's talk about how the New York Times has a habit of creating alternative facts. Now, do you remember Kellyanne Conway kind of stumbling into this, probably in like 2017, where she was being pinned in an interview and she said, well, there are alternative facts, and everyone roundly mocked her.
Yeah.
And I was really annoyed about that because that's totally true. It's a totally true thing that there is such a thing as alternative facts. What these are facts that just lay outside of the media narrative. Things that the media just don't want to talk about. In fact, there are entire sort of compilations of hate facts all over the internet from various different ethnic and gender groups that are just things that appear to be true that are just difficult to, shove into the sort of politically correct narrative, and so they just get ignored. And so you could reasonably describe these as being alternative facts. And we have an example of the New York Times not only creating fake news, but actively sidelining facts to essentially be in the category of alternative facts. If we can get slide 1 up, then we can see how what we were talking about yesterday was in the Project Veritas versus the New York Times video, was that the New York Times have posted there's no evidence of nationwide fraud, say election officials. Well, they're asking the Democrats, did the Democrats do anything wrong in most of these cases? But as you can see, I've lifted this image from today's news trending page on Twitter. So now what is an article, I would say entirely without merit, or the merit it does have is misleading, is now being promoted as the main sort of narrative point that people should take away.
Do you know if Twitter does that? I assume they
Twitter
do.
has done that themselves,
They pick
yes.
a verified source,
Yes.
and then
Yeah, I mean, it's never InfoWars that ends up on the news section of Twitter trending, right?
yeah.
But anyway, the way they frame this, if we can go to slide 2, you can see how they've tweeted this out. This is all included in the Twitter featured section. Election officials in dozens of states from both parties told the New York Times that there was no evidence of voting fraud, amounting to a forceful rebuke of President Trump's false narrative. This is just not really a true statement. Trump's narrative is neither true nor false, as we haven't arrived at the end of the investigations yet, so we are yet to discover. It's indeterminate whether that's correct or not. There's no particular rebuke in asking the people who you're accusing of committing a crime whether they've committed that crime or not, because naturally they deny it. And the election officials in the one for was it Kansas?
Yeah.
That said, well, we don't have any evidence of widespread voter fraud in Kansas.
They'd ask 2 Republicans,
Yes.
and one Republican was a guy in Kansas saying there was none in Kansas. It's like,
Yeah.
right, but we're not asking about Kansas, are we?
Yes, that's not the allegation. The allegation is in other states. And in the article, if we can go to the third one now, please. In the article, you can see how they're framing this. So you can see they've sandwiched one of the Democrats between, these are 3 of the 8 they asked, but they've sandwiched, like, between the 2 Republicans that they featured in the previous article, one Democrat, as if to say, well, look, there is no particular obvious left-wing bias. But what they're not showing you here is the fact that there are 5 other Democrat agents that they've asked and have not included. So it gives the impression that they are less biased than they are.
Yeah.
And it's a way of kind of forming the narrative. And again, this is the end of their description in the article of what's happening there. And then you get the response. Can we go on to number 4, please? Previously, please. This was reported by Fox News, how a New York Times columnist started posting how angrily Byron, I think, was it Byron? No, it was a different guy, sorry. But he was angrily posting how there is right-wing misinformation teeming all over Facebook. Can we go to the 5th one? So he says, Facebook is absolutely teeming with right-wing misinformation now. All of these are among the 10 most engaged URLs on the platform over the past 24 hours. Because for anyone who doesn't know, Facebook is essentially a far-right platform at this point, because the general public are basically far-right, and the general public all use Facebook.
The boomers are on it.
Yeah. The boomers are on it, and God bless, by the way. Keep going. And what was the most popular just
I
news
think
outlet, was it?
This is the same guy, and he loves to rail about the Daily Wire and Ben
Yes.
Shapiro. I can already see there the
Yes.
Daily Wire link.
Because
Breitbart.
the Daily Wire are absolutely dominating Facebook news, which is great because they're not leftist.
Ben specifically as well. Like, he gets very angry at Ben, saying, "Oh, look at this terrible news. Ben Shapiro's #1 for another week," and it's like, yeah. Like, Ben's a perfectly moderate conservative.
Yeah, but as you can see from all of these headlines, Republican in Michigan goes from loser to winner after technical glitch fixed. Officials urge confidence in the system from the Daily Wire. That's a true story. Okay. That was a true story. That was just a county in Michigan. It was something like 13,000 votes as well. The next one, William Barr authorizes Department of Justice to look into voting irregularities. It's reported by Breitbart, but it's a completely true story. Michigan legislature holds rare emergency session to investigate election irregularities from Dan Bongino. Again, completely true. And Purdue, Loeffler call on Georgia Secretary of State to resign over election. Again, a true statement. Whether you are interested in it or not, all of these are not misinformation. And so he got called out by a lot of conservative journalists and people at the New York Post, things like this, where they were like, how can you say that a misinformation, these can be factually accurate and part of a misinformation campaign? If they're factually accurate, that means they're not misinformation. It just means you have a particular narrative that you are trying to establish, and if there are alternative facts to this narrative, then you have got to describe them as being in some way bad or negative. So ignore them. Don't worry about these facts.
I'm coming to the conclusion that the term misinformation for Democrat circles is just the alternative facts.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same term just being applied to anything they don't like.
Things that are true that we disapprove of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah.
Did this guy work for the New York Times?
He's a columnist for the New York Times, Kevin Roose.
That's great.
Yes. But then he doubled down on this. Sorry, can we go back to the previous one? This is the doubling down of it, as you can see. Part of a misinformation campaign aimed at undermining confidence in an election. Elections aren't holy or sacred. They're run by flawed humans, and it's entirely possible that they can be tampered with. They're tampered with in many, many, many countries around the world, and there's no particular reason to think they can't be tampered with in the United States, especially as we have lots of video evidence that would indicate that maybe there is shenanigans at hand. And we don't want any of that kind of malarkey, and so you have to be particularly diligent about these things and make sure that you are being... there's a lot of keen oversight in what's going on.
Trump should just tweet that out. We've got to stop with all this election malarkey.
He did say the word shenanigans.
He did say the word shenanigans.
He did. It was fantastic. I approve of these sort of old worldly words. But yeah, can we go to the next one, please? So he says, take Breitbart, for example. All week they've been getting huge engagement with stories about election-related glitches and Republicans protesting the results. In some cases, they're just repeating what a politician said. But that's not saying that they're false, because they're not false.
That's what a reporter does.
That's right. That's
Which
exactly
is something
right.
the New York Times, I guess, doesn't do, and is astounded by.
Well, yeah, they're quite surprised that, hang on, there's people out there reporting the news. How dare they imply that the election glitches from, Dominion software or something? That is something we're going to have to spend a bit more time looking into, because it looks like there is actually a series of genuine concerns there.
Yeah, there's nothing conclusive yet, so I don't know.
But
that first one jumps out to me. It is, this is hard evidence the media needs to do your jobs.
Yes, well, that's Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah, it's just Rudy Giuliani giving a statement and Breitbart saying he said this. What's wrong with that?
But also, moreover, Rudy Giuliani has sworn affidavits from witnesses, which is evidence and needs to be investigated. This is not unique. Kayleigh McEnany said she had like 234 of them, as we covered yesterday. And there's lots of videos of people doing things that are outright suspicious, where they're not outright illegal, like vote counting being done outside of the official hall and things like this. Refusing entry to Republican poll watchers, things like this. There are lots of examples of things that are worthy of investigation at the very least. Now, I'm not saying that all of these are concrete proof that something has happened, and it could well turn out to be that there just happens to be a bunch of innocent explanations for all of these things, but it's not wrong for the right-wing press to spend their time investigating it and reporting on it if politicians and lawyers and whatnot are covering it. It's completely normal, but it goes against the presumed position that Kevin Roose has taken, which is the elections are sacred and inviolable, and God's ever-watching eye is making sure that none of the Democrats' operatives stuff any ballots or anything like that, because they would never do something like that.
No, of course not. I mean, there's two things I think I've to say about this, which is I'm sure you can find this from pages like, I don't know, The Hill or Now This, or even probably the New York Times.
Doubtless.
Doing exactly the same thing. Yeah. AOC said this today. Isn't that interesting? Nothing wrong with that. You're allowed to do that.
Well, AOC says all sorts of crazy nonsense, and they'll repeat
that's just reporting. It's up to the audience, or to interpret what's going on. But we shouldn't be surprised by this, I don't think, because the New York Times on the day of the election, on the night, put out that tweet saying it's for other media to report whether or not.
Well, we'll get to that in a later story, actually, because this all does tie in. Something we'll talk about in a bit.
It's like that CNN guy, remember, when the emails came out and he says, it's up for us to interpret this?
Yes.
It's not for you to look at the reporting and make your own decision.
Well, what he said was... it's... sorry. What he said is... sorry, that was another bit of the housekeeping. We do have better microphones coming, they just haven't... all the equipment hasn't arrived yet. But yeah, Cuomo said it's illegal to read the Wikipedia leaks. It's okay for the media, but it's illegal for you. And it's like, okay, well, what makes you so special and different?
I've got the right politics. That's it.
I've got the institution. And not more than that, I have something at stake that obviously I stand to risk losing were you to continue doing things that were outside of my control. And again, like saying that you should get all of your information from me, like, that's terrible. I would never say such a thing. You should watch all news sources. Watch a big variety of things. Don't ever go from one place. But sorry, go on.
I was going to say, this coming from the New York Times is especially concerning because, like, old media, CNN, all of them have been attacking YouTube and the internet. You need to censor more. You need to promote us more because we're more reliable. How dare people look at the information for themselves? And especially from the New York Times, given the example of PewDiePie, the fact that they just completely made up nonsense against him. And it's sort of embarrassing because
that was the Wall Street Journal.
Was the Wall Street Journal? I thought the New York Times jumped on the bandwagon.
Oh, they all jumped on the bandwagon. But the original expose was it was discovered by the Wall Street Journal after
there's a podcast,
videos that have been watched millions of times.
Yeah, there's a podcast series the New York Times has done where PewDiePie's actually gone on now and be like, yeah, you guys smeared the hell out of me, and it's very interesting to watch.
I haven't seen that.
I'll send you it.
Yeah.
But what was I going to say? The point is essentially they don't believe in people being able to see information for themselves. They want to interpret it and give it to you.
I think that the problem they have is that people might be able to see information for themselves.
Exactly, and that means that they're pointless now.
Yeah. It's not just that they're pointless either. It's that they, as we'll see in the next segment, or in a bit, there is an obvious and overt attempt to control what the public think, to set a particular agenda in the public mind, and have that become reality. But I won't talk about it yet. But can we go to the last slide, please? So that's the thing. All of this sort of ties in together. It's a very interlaced series of stories. But yeah, as he says here, so many of these stories aren't false per se. Many have been.
Okay, then why are you wasting my time with this?
Yeah, I mean, many have been reported elsewhere. But if you just look in the framing and how they're serving them up, bam, revealed just in. And the facts they aren't including, it's obvious they know what they're doing. It's like, okay, well, you're complaining about the style of presentation. It's clickbait, which obviously it is, but it's not false per se.
Yeah, you called it misinformation.
Yes, you're saying that they're actively not true. But then he gets to, it's obvious they know what they're doing. So, okay, now we're into the mind reading and projection side of things. Now we're into what's in your mind, Kevin Roose, and what you're going to see in others. So he says the people who run these pages know they can't claim outright that the election was stolen because Facebook's fact checkers might ding them. So, okay, stop there. I think that everything that Breitbart posts is basically going to have a Facebook fact checker thing on it.
I'm going to check it now.
You can probably check it, but most of them are going to be. So they do the just asking questions thing and use discussion threads and cherry-picked headlines to accomplish the same thing. It's like, Kevin, you got to understand, buddy, that like half your country is looking. Actually, this isn't true. Not half the country is looking, but a large portion of the Trump base is looking at what's going on and saying, well, hang on, this all looks a bit shady. And the fact that you guys have leapt to conclusions that would favour the left-wing view of the world kind of implies that you're just doing the same thing that they're doing.
Yeah, it's not everything, but the number 2 thing they posted today is, go on, fact check on it.
It's all going to be covered in fact checks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's wonderful watching the New York Times actually double down on the fact that there are facts that they can consider misinformation.
But they're alternative facts. They're just the right wing believes these to be true because of X, Y, Z reason.
Because they appear to be true.
Yes, in this case. But if you're a leftist, they believe it because
Yeah,
of this.
you're not allowed to believe it. So
Yeah,
that's a misinformation.
I mean, we had the same thing with the last election, which is why those fact checkers are coming in now.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching. So everyone thinks Facebook's misinformation and we have to Russian trolls get on the internet came from
Yeah.
anyone else, but it came from Mark Zuckerberg actually. I remember him talking about it, and then Hillary started talking about it,
Yeah.
and then it became part of the Democratic response to
Right.
the election. But it's the reason he has all these fact checkers, and it's amazing because very, very recently he gave the hearing to, I think it was Congress, not the Senate, in which he was saying we don't want to be the arbiters of truth. No, we can't do this and that and all the rest of it. It's like it's too far gone, mate. Like I don't know if he honestly believes it, but why are you fact checking everything if you don't want to determine what isn't true?
I get the feeling that Zuckerberg, and he's done this before with regard to like Holocaust denial and things like this, where he has put forward the principled free speech position where he doesn't want to be the arbiter of truth, and he there have been leaked audio from within where he has been on the defensive side, on like the free speech extremist side of the argument.
Not quite. His defense is always based in our customer base expects us to tone it down a little bit.
And not just that, our customer base does not share our political opinions,
Yeah.
which he he's obviously becoming fully aware that Christ, the public is really right wing, really right wing, and we're not. But he has made these principled defenses before. I just think that I can only imagine that the amount of pressure that he is under from different angles. I mean the very fact that he made a defense and has consistently, even if he's collapsed and failed at every point in the series of stages that have gone on, the very fact that he made the defense was probably a bit of a sacrifice in and of itself. He probably got a lot of stress from merely saying, well, hang on, guys, have you considered that the public are ravening right-wing lunatics? No, we can't consider that, etc., etc. So I get the feeling this probably wouldn't have been something that he would put on himself, but he's just capitulated. So.
But I find it strange because I believe he's still got 51% of the company.
Yeah, he's got the controlling stake in it.
He's the CEO. They can't actually oust him.
No.
So he could just rant and rave all day, and there's de facto nothing they can do. But I'm sure in work, you've got to work with these people for the rest of your lives.
Based Mark Zuckerberg, come on, buddy, come on. We don't want to hear about you grilling, Mark, although, everyone likes to grill. What we want to hear about is your opinions. just you've got a great platform, man. Just sit there and go, so I've really got concerns. And then just start telling us how you feel. I would love to see it.
So we're reading all this fact checks, and it turns out they're right. I mean, there's one of the fact checks. I don't think we'll have time for it today, but it was just talking about the 1,400 dead people, and the short and long of it is you click the fact check, and it just says, yeah, but one of them's still alive. It's like, yeah, but it's a list of 1,400 dead people, and I've already typed in on Twitter, the 5 of them, and they're older than the oldest person alive.
Yeah.
So the fact that one of them is alive is not a fact check. It's not a rebuke of the statement. So
I just am amazed that Biden got 100% of the zombie vote. It's a huge
Popular
demographic too.
Yeah.
There's so many dead people.
I was using the politically correct term, mortally challenged.
Oh yes, good point. Yeah, don't censor us, please.
It's hate speech against the dead voters.
Yes. No, I respect our dead voters.